You have legal questions. Amy the attorney has the answers. Welcome to today's show. And here's Amy.
So under the new law, it's not just the smokable marijuana that we're talking about. It is all the different products. I've been to Colorado, so I've seen what's available. Are all the things, like you said, dab, oils, I can't even remember some of them. Are all of those going to be legal in the state of Missouri as well if you have a card?
Yep. And we, in the last legislative session, they were trying to put in place a ban that would have prevented edibles that would have appealed to children. Can't be shaped like a fruit. Can't, have a cartoon character on it. Can't, be sweet or whatever. That went nowhere, thank God. But, you should be able to find it. And they even allow suppositories in Missouri, which a lot of people are like, oh, who cares about that? Well, actually, somebody who is in a horrific amount of pain does care about that, because that is probably the most effective delivery method. It enters the system rather quickly. It lasts for a very long time, and you can take very high doses that way without the corresponding head high or whatever you would normally get if you were to ingest that amount, like through an edible or whatever. And the reason that's important is a lot of states don't have suppositories. They're very, very difficult to find. So our law specifically allows for it, which is great.
Okay, let's talk about when you have the card and where you can, and we're going to specifically talk about smoking just because it's probably the most obtrusive and most noticeable. What is the law regarding where can you smoke that legal marijuana?
Not in a public place. So basically, you'll be safe in your home. Theoretically and practically speaking, you shouldn't be doing it around other people in Missouri who aren't patients, because then you don't, if the smell attracts law enforcement or whatever, and you're the one smoking it, they're going to assume everyone else is partaking, and then you're going to have a bit of explaining to do. So typically in the privacy of your own home is the way to go. However, some locations may be able to provide a spot for a patient and either a family member or a caregiver, if they want to have them with them, to consume their cannabis medicinally on premises. It'll be like a little room. You gotta go in there by yourself and get the job done. But the trend nationally is towards consumption lounges. So I've got a client in Southern California who opened up the first legal consumption lounge down there. And it's just like a bar, except no alcohol, cannabis instead, and lots of water and snacks. So that's on the horizon. And I've been telling my dispensary clients, if you're smart, you're going to get a premises where you have extra space, so that when that does become a possibility, you can easily retrofit your space. And then you don't have to apply for a whole new license. You've already got a license on the premises.
Is delivery going to be part of the mechanism here in Missouri? Could you deliver marijuana to somebody?
Absolutely. So if you get a cultivation license, a MIP license, a dispensary license, it includes your ability to transport. So every facility license is going to have different transport requirements. So a cultivation facility can transport to another licensed facility, whether it's a testing facility or a MIP. A MIP can transfer to testing to a dispensary, and a dispensary can deliver to its patients and caregivers.
That's wonderful.
Because if the whole point is patient access, and you're dealing with severely disabled people who may not be able to drive or may not have reliable access to transportation, then absolutely. The only thing is, before it leaves the dispensary, it has to be paid for. So they may have to take the payment over the phone or something to that effect, but they're not going to allow the product to leave the dispensary until it's paid for.
Okay. What about actual smaller municipalities, cities, counties, and their reaction to this? I happen to be on the Grandview website for Grandview Municipal Court, and there was a notice of a meeting, a general public meeting of their city council to discuss the new marijuana regulations and how it would affect Grandview. Can you speak to that at all?
Not Grandview specifically. All I know about Grandview is they're going to have a hard time placing dispensaries or any businesses there, because unless they implement a variance through their ordinances, the law basically says that they have to locate these kinds of businesses 1,000 feet away from any church, secondary school, primary school, or daycare. And Grandview's got a lot of churches. So it's going to be very difficult to find a spot in Grandview unless they shorten that distance. And some cities have. Some cities in Missouri absolutely have. Columbia, for example, and I should say, the law doesn't allow any municipality in this state to prohibit a cannabis-based business.
Okay.
What it does say is that the city can regulate reasonable time, place, and manner, right? And of course, you can't have a big pot leaf out front or anything like that. Advertising is going to be very strict. That's why when you go to Colorado, you see all these adopt a highway signs with the cannabis businesses on them, because that's how they get to advertise on signs. So there's going to be restrictions like that. Like in Columbia, they tried to say, well, in our downtown district, you can only put them on the second floor of a building, and that failed. And so there have been lots of little skirmishes in the city council meetings as to how this is going to work. But most of the time, the trend is to say, okay, we're going to be welcoming because they realize it's going to bring revenue. But at the same time, they can't charge any additional tax on the marijuana, and they can only do reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. And there's a meeting coming up in Kansas City, I believe, on the 12th. So maybe tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah. Will there be areas in the state of Missouri that it will be harder to get medical marijuana than, say, the cities? I mean, will there be a dearth of dispensaries and businesses in outstate or mid-Missouri?
Well, I think part of the problem that you're facing is, and you can see it in some of the application requirements, right? So with the merit-based scoring system, if you locate your business in an area that has a lower employment rate, you're going to get extra points on your license. And so there are people that are actively looking in congressional districts, in zip codes that are economically distressed because they could potentially bring jobs to those areas. However, is it economically viable for a business to locate in an area like that? And we're not really sure. I mean, if the income's lower there, then they're not going to be able to mark up their product like they're used to. Like, there's about a 300% markup on average nationally, just because if you're a dispensary, you don't get the tax deductions under 280E that a normal business does. So your write-offs are less and your markup is higher, but in an economically distressed area, that may be a problem.